Hello and welcome to The Smart Author. So I'm Steve Judge, and today I've got chatting to Karen Williams, who was my book coach. I'd say was my book coach, possibly still is, depending on what books I've got coming up in the future. But in the past, you've helped me with my book that I wrote, my autobiography, Don't Lean on Your Excuses, and you're an amazing help. And I'd love to chat to you about kind of how you got into the whole book mentoring thing, writing a book, helping other people, find out a little bit more nitty-gritty about you. So I've got a load of questions here in front of me, and it's a great delight to be able to kind of almost turn the tables on this. So welcome, Karen Williams.
Thank you, Steve. It's lovely to be here, and I know you're so used to being on the other side of the camera, so to speak, in terms of being interviewed. So yeah, you're in the hot seat, or I'm in the hot seat. It depends which way you look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, bring it on. So, right, because I'm the interviewer for once, I've got to be all very official, and I've got a clipboard and stuff like that. These are fake, actually. They don't really work. But still, I've got some questions. So let's start at the very beginning. How did your book journey start? Tell us all about it.
Yeah, well, I never set out to write any books. It wasn't on my list. So potted history is I started out in business in 2006 because it was in the January, and I've always been a quiet person, an introvert. You may be surprised because I know you've known me for quite a few years now, but my boss said to me once, "Karen, I wish you'd speak out more." And I took that to heart, and I thought, actually, you know what, I'm in a job I'm not enjoying. I need to do something different. I just it was the kind of the hot poker up the backside to make me do something different. And that was January 2006. So I got myself a life coach. I worked with this life coach for a few months. I went, actually, I could do this. So I trained as a coach, and I set up my own business by the November 2006. As I said, I never set out to write a book, and it was 3 years later that I decided to do it. And the main catalyst for that was the fact that I was doing my NLP Master Practitioner, and I had the opportunity to do a modelling project. So I decided to choose a really big modelling project, and I modelled the mindset behind a successful coaching business. So I interviewed some amazing coaches in the UK and the States. And one day I just went, I'm going to write a book about it. And that's kind of where it all started. So that was August 2009. And 18 months later, I had the book in my hand.
18 months. Okay. I'm just making a few notes as you go along. So just go back. What was your job before you went off alone and did your own thing?
Yeah, my career was fairly well. I started off doing hospitality. That's what I did very beginning, and then I moved into HR and training. So I was doing a training and HR role when I decided to start my own business. And actually, the first few years I was working, sort of doing that transition like a lot of people do, working full-time, going part-time, before making the leap to suddenly go, all right, I'm ready to go. And I made the leap 10 years ago. So August 2010 was when I finally went, bye-bye, I'm going out on my own, and now I'm unemployable. But one of the reasons that I did the interviews and did the modelling project is because I really struggled during those first few years when I was making that transition. You know, I had some really great, I was doing career coaching, I got some great corporate contracts, I did disc profiling as well. So I had some amazing opportunities, but it wasn't enough for me to, literally go. And in the end, I was sort of not really pushed, but my husband and I decided we were going to go to Australia for 5 weeks, and they couldn't keep the job open for me. So I kind of said goodbye, went to Australia for 5 weeks, and whilst I was out there, I started planning my future.
Oh my goodness, that sounds so exciting. So that was the hot poker in a way. Is that
was the hot poker? Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, as they said, we can't keep your job open, and you went, fine, I'm off.
I'm off.
I'll sort it out when I get back. And I think that's what you got to do sometimes, isn't it? And some people say that they don't make these decisions. Decisions are made for them. I don't think that's strictly true. I think there's things that happen, but you decide how you react to those. And if they said, look, we can't keep your job open, you could have said, okay, I'll stay here then. There is no choice. But there is a choice. There's always a choice. And you made the choice to go and go for it. So why did you choose a book to share all this knowledge that you'd gathered and you wanted to share?
Well, I've always been a writer. When I started my business, I blogged regularly. I've loved writing. Not many people know this, I even wrote a manuscript probably about 5 years before that I did absolutely nothing with, and I've got no idea where it is now. I wanted to write a book, so it's kind of always been there in the back of my mind. So that's one of the reasons for doing it. And I think one of the great things about a book is you've got the longevity. So you can put something out on social media, you can write a blog, you can, you know, you can do a podcast interview, but having a book on someone's bookshelf is the thing that helps you to stand out from other people. So that's really why I decided to write a book. And I am a writer. I enjoy it. Yeah, it's one of the things I find naturally easy.
Okay, what's the manuscript that you wrote?
It was called With or Without Words, and it was all about communication.
Okay.
And God knows why I did it. And I can't even remember when I did it. It's just etched in my mind. I was reminded about it last year.
What's the difference between a manuscript and a book?
The manuscript never made it into a book. So I had 50,000 words of written stuff typed up, and then I did absolutely nothing with it. And I was determined actually with my first book not to do the same, because it's so easy to do that. You could write a book and go, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, no one's going to like it, and then do nothing with it. And that's pretty much what I did with the first one. So when I wrote The Secrets of Successful Coaches, it was just like I had to push through to actually get it out there.
So tell us a bit more about that. How did you have to push through to get it out there?
Well, it's interesting. I was watching a How To Academy interview last night with Julia Cameron and Liz Gilbert, and they both talked about imposter syndrome. And given that they've written, I think Julia's written 40 books, I can't remember how many books Liz has written, they talked about imposter syndrome. They both go through it, and that's what I did with my first book. You know, I went through the questions like, who am I to write a book? What if people don't like it? You know, what have I got to say? And actually, you know Cheryl Andrews, and I worked with her during that stage of writing that first book to get me over that hurdle, because she's great at helping people manage their critic, that little inner voice in their head that say, you know, that question whether you can do it. And she was the person who helped me to do it. And I think because I'd interviewed some really successful coaches like Michael Neal, Gladina McMahon, Steve Marriott, Blair Palmer, you know, because I'd interviewed them, in a way I felt like I couldn't let them down, because they were, you know, they'd given up their time for me. They had, you know, been so generous in some of the expertise they'd shared with me, and it made a huge difference to my business, which is the reason I wrote the book in the first place. So that was a catalyst, but it wasn't easy. And also when you're doing interviews and you're going and you've never done it before, there's all that, how do I get published? How do I get the message out there? And I think it was different back then as well, because not many people were doing it. There weren't people like me, book mentors out there to take people through the process. So it was really tough at times. And I said it took me 18 months because I went round and round in circles going, what am I doing?
Yeah, you're kind of, I guess you're learning your way. Did you have a book mentor or book coach at all?
No, I didn't. They weren't really in existence back then. But I did have a business coach, and I was also working with Cheryl to help me to get through the mental blocks. But actually doing it myself was very much kind of alone, which is one of the reasons I do it now, because if I'd known then what I know now, it would have saved me so much time and energy.
Yeah, I get that. You know, I'm running my own business, and sometimes I think, oh, I wish I'd done this 2 years ago. And you think, no, because it's kind of evolution. Sometimes you have
Absolutely.
to go through those phases. It's frustrating, and it would be better if somebody told me 2 years ago, you know, what I should and shouldn't do. But sometimes you can't speed up these processes. So my story is quite different, because I kind of knew that I could write a book, because so many people have said, Steve, amazing story, you need to write a book. I had so many people telling me I needed to write a book, so I knew that I needed to write a book. And then I started trying to write a book, because everybody said it was dead easy. And I got to a stage where I was writing stuff, but I didn't know where I was going with it. I had no clue. I was well out of my comfort zone. And I think that's the thing, is that, you know, it's about knowing your limits. And I got to a point where, like, I'm lost. I was like lost in the wilderness. And that's when I went on to Google. You know, Google's a really good place to find solutions and answers. And I typed in something along the lines of, how can anybody help me to write a book? And somebody said, you need a book mentor. And I said, what's a book mentor? I never even heard of that. It's like a coach, but like a book coach. I said, oh, that sounds crazy. And then that's why I found you, Karen. And I think what I really liked about you was you showed an interest. You didn't say, okay, yes, I'm a book coach, book mentor, and these are my prices. You're saying, well, tell me more about your story. Why is it that you want to write this book? And then you did some research on the videos and my posts, and you said, wow, yes, Steve, you do need to write a book, and I can help you. And I was like, oh, you can help me. This is great. So this is, and you really helped me throughout the writing of a book, but also at the other end, you know, the publishing of it. And it is scary when you're doing something you've never done before. It's so nice to have somebody that says, not it's easy, but hey, I've got this. this is what we need to do. We need to do this. These are the options, and take it from there. So once you'd finished writing your first book, Karen, what happened after that?
Well, I think it really put me and my business on the map. So March 2011, I stood up in front of 70 people at my book launch. Some of the people I interviewed had travelled from across the UK to be there, and it was kind of really solidified it. And I think the best moment I had was, and you can probably relate to this, was holding my first book in my hand first time. I've got a copy here. You know, I look back at it now and I go, you know, it's I know things have changed with book covers and things like that since then, but I'm still proud of that moment where I got the big box of books in my lounge and I'm opening it going, oh, because back then it wasn't print on demand as well. You know, it was, you had 1,000 copies in a print run. So there's no ordering 10 books. So yeah, so it was amazing just having this book, you know, not all of the books arrived because some of them were in storage and distributed obviously through the online platforms. But yeah, there's just something about having your book in your hand for the first time. And as I said, it put me and my business on the map. I interviewed a lot of the coaches I interviewed for the book. We went on and we did some podcast interviews afterwards. Then I interviewed more successful coaches, which could have been another book actually. But yeah, it really, really helped me in my business. And it kind of propelled me to, you know, it set me aside as an expert, someone credible, because as I said, not many people were doing it back then. Yeah, so it was absolutely different. And I think because I'd also learned a lot, I was putting the, you know, what was in this book, I was putting into place in my business, and that was huge as well.
What's the first book called?
The Secrets of Successful Coaches.
Ah, very good. And it's so nice what you said about actually holding your book. So I've got my book here. My book, when I got my book through the post and I opened it, and just like, wow, and looked inside it and you can see it, and I got some color ones and everything like that. It's an incredible feeling. And what I did was to help motivate myself, because when you're writing your book, you said it took you 18 months. It probably took me about the same time from starting it to actually getting it published. It's a long time. You're going to go through highs and lows. And I think when you're going through a low where you just think, mine turned into, I've got to get this damn book written or finished, which is a horrible term, but I'd spent so much time on it and it was getting frustrating, the editing side of it and getting it done and putting all the hours in it. How do you keep motivated? And I think we'll come to that later, but one of the things that I did was, I'm very much into having a vision, and so I used to visualize myself standing outside a bookshop holding my book. I had a photo, I mocked up a photo of me. I've got my vision board, I had that there and thought how good it would be. But like you said then about actually holding your book, that's what I wanted to do. And what I did was I mocked up a book, my autobiography, which I've got here. So that's obviously my real book there. This is one that I mocked up, and I made the front cover, and I made a sleeve, and I put a #1 bestseller, and I got a barcode and everything like that. And I used to hold this book, and I thought, wow, it feels amazing to hold my own book, even though it's not real. My brain's starting to believe it's real. This is what it's going to feel like. I want it. I really want this. And it's about what works for you, whether it's a vision, whether it's something tactile, whether it's talking to people, mentors, people to encourage you, your cheerleaders, I guess, your tribe. So, that was your first book. What did you do after that? You wrote some other books?
I did, yeah. But I will say, when I did this one, I think I pretty much modelled everything that was going on around me. So this book was incredibly successful, actually, and it became an Amazon bestseller. I said never again, and my VA Tracy reminded me a year later, because I then wrote this one.
Okay.
So this one's so much easier. So yeah, I did that in 6 months, start to finish. I had a goal, I had a deadline. I was actually doing a project called A Year to Live whilst I was writing this book, which I'll touch on in a second. And I was running an event in November where we were, it's a 2-day event, my first big event. We had a magician, we had a firewalk. It was kind of all singing, all dancing. I had some amazing speakers there as well. And yeah, I had a deadline, and I just put my head down and got on with it. And that's how I work best, actually, is when I do have a deadline and I do things quickly, because I can think about a book for ages, but when I do go and write it now, I need to do it quite quickly. So yeah, that came out in 2012. And I was also writing this one at the same time, which is my story. So The Mouse That Rules, which is me. This is a picture of me on there.
So cute.
Oh, yes. I was back then. So this is my story, and this came about because I was doing a year to live in 2012, which was based on a book by Stephen Levine, where he and his wife, he's passed now, but he and his wife used to look after terminally ill cancer patients. And he said one day, you know, why wait until you've got a year to live to actually live your best life? So in 2012, I did all sorts of things that scared me. I went skiing for the first time, and my husband's been skiing since he was a youngster. And I'd always let him go away on holiday every year. And then one day I went, you know what, I'm going to join you. So I've been on that learning journey as well. I've become a firewalk instructor. I signed up to do a trip to Machu Picchu to do the Inca Trail. Gosh, I did so many things that year. I jumped out of a plane, things like that just really pushed me. But this is more about my story, my entrepreneurial story. On
when you jumped out the
I had a parachute on, and I was attached to somebody else.
Okay. That's just wondering then.
But this is where this came about. But this was going to be about my year to live, but it expanded because I thought, actually, I've got a story to tell. And a lot of people who've read The Mouse at Walls have said, I was that shy person. You know, I'm inspired by the fact that you've been through all of that and you've done something about it. So this came out, oh gosh, and this took me ages. This took me, because it was never the top priority. This was more of a kind of a passion project. It was something I really wanted to do. I felt, you know, it came from the heart rather than a business related tool. But this one, and then these two, Your Book is a Hook, Book Marketing Made Simple. So Your Book is a Hook, yep.
Wow.
Yep. Twins. And Your Book is a Hook came out originally in 2014, did a second edition in 2017, and then this came out in 2017. Do what they say on the tin, and then I wrote my sixth one last year, which is audio only at the moment. Anyway, I've not got as far as putting it to print copy yet. So yeah, that's the potted history of my books.
Okay, yes, because I went onto Amazon and I could only see 5 books, but your sixth one is audio, that's why. Yeah,
it's audio only, because a lot of my clients last year were saying, I'd love to do an audiobook, how do I do it? So I thought, well, and I've always done that, let's experiment, let's see what happens. So I wrote it really quickly. I took myself away to the New Forest, or just outside the New Forest, to write it. Wrote most of it in about 3.5 days, and then I recorded it on audio last year. But yeah, that was incredibly useful because it helped solidify. So when I wrote Your Book as a Hook, it's kind of my process for writing. It's modeling myself, my process, but things have evolved since then. And I knew that I had to write Becoming an Authority, because writing a book has become much more mainstream these days, but there's such a difference between writing a book, any old book, and writing a book that really helps you to build your business. And that's really what it's all about.
It is. So we've transferred a little bit from you being an author to actually helping other people. Tell me about the transition. Why have you gone from author to mentor?
Simply in 2014, I was coaching a lot of business owners, so coaches, therapists, who were where I was back in 2006, and a lot of them saw the success I was having with my books, and they said, Karen, can you help me? So I did that alongside the business coaching to begin with, and then in 2014 I just made that leap. I just went, you know, I love writing, I love reading. It just felt like the natural transition. As I said, I was working with a few clients with their business and their book, and I still do that. I just do it under the banner of book mentoring, because nowadays I help people to write a book, but it's always linked to their business. So I might give feedback on someone's website. I might help them to, it's all about helping them to make sure that the book supports their business rather than becomes a vanity project just because they want to write it. Okay, so let's just dig down a little bit on that. So why are you helping people? Why are you mentoring? Why are you helping all these people? Why don't you just carry on doing your books? Because you've been very successful in your books. Why are you helping other people now? Because I see a lot of mistakes that people make. I see people struggle. I see people dreaming about a book for years. I see people worry about, I don't have enough time, I don't know how to get started. And because I pretty much made every single mistake that there could be on the journey, and I've seen other people make mistakes as well, I feel that I've got the experience that enables me to do that. And if I can give people the shortcuts, I can make it easy. So a bit like you, Steve, with your book, when you were really struggling, it was about stripping it back to the beginning and going, okay, so what's your plan? What's your vision? You know, too many people write the book without knowing what they wanted to do for their business, without having a clear structure for it. You know, I remember Cheryl, you and I sat in that conference room in Loughborough, wasn't it? With big pieces of flip chart paper and post-it notes around the wall. And I know evolved when you started writing it, but I think that was a really great starting point to actually bring it together. And I'm a really structured, planned person, so I just make it easy for people.
Yeah, I think that's what I think that's probably my why as well. I get frustrated. So my why is very much to help people to have the happiness and fulfillment of achieving their true life goals. Very similar to what you were talking about with, living the last year of your life. People
Mm.
say, I want to do this, I want to do that, but I can't do this. And I just think, why not? If that's what's
Yeah.
going to make you really happy, why don't you do that? Oh, I haven't got time, I haven't got the money, I haven't got the resources. Just if that's what will make you really happy, if that's your self-actualization, then you should do that. You shouldn't be doing something that makes you unhappy. And I know it's not that easy. You can't just quit work and just go and do, live the high life, but you can work on it. You can have a vision, you can have a
Mm.
plan and work towards that goal. And it frustrates me when people don't do that and they just think they almost live life as a flat line. And they finish at the end and they go, that's it. And I know going out of your comfort zone means that there's highs and lows. But then if you do it correctly, you will go up again. You get the highs and lows.
Yeah.
You'll end up higher than where you started. Self-actualization rather than just a flat line.
Mm.
So it frustrates me, and it sounds like it almost frustrates you as well, that you can see people that they're writing stuff, but it's just not quite right. If they just tweaked it here and tweaked it there, I guess you help them to help them flourish in a way and get their true essence out and true authenticity of that person, what they are and who they want to be, and also their business, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah, it's about helping them to really write a book that is aligned to their business, that really boosts their brand. That so for example, if someone goes onto your website, Steve, and they go onto your social media, they read your book, the message is consistent. There's nothing jarring. You're not writing a book about one subject and then you're talking about something else. Everything kind of dovetails together, and that's really what I help people to do, is to create a brand building book, business building book, credibility, authority, standing out. Is about putting you firmly on the map, in terms of being picked for speaking engagements, or to get clients off the back of your book. That's what it's all about. It's not about selling millions of copies, because very few people have a lot of success in that. It's more about the positioning tool, using it as a expensive business card, or really just putting you on the map.
Yeah, no, and I love how you're very honest about that you don't actually sell millions of copies. A lot of people think, I'm going to write this book, it's going to go viral, it's going to be massive, and then I'm going to go on a world tour and everybody's going to want to. It doesn't quite happen that way. No, I'm not saying it can't, and by all means have a vision, have a goal, work towards it. But what you got to make sure is that you do everything so you've got no regrets. I use it as a business tool now, as a speaker. I speak about my book. So if people can, if I can send my book to people, they can read it and they go, wow, Steve, what a story. Love the story. Could you now come in person and speak? And I go, yeah, of course I can. I can talk about my journey in half an hour, but is there a particular part in the book which you want me to expand on? You've now read my whole story. Mine's quite a big book. And they can knuckle down on that and find that. So you help people to write a book, whether that's with their life, personal life, or their business. How come a book and maybe not a blog post or Facebook Lives or anything like that?
I think when you've got a book, it's all about multi-purposing. So when you've got a book, you need to be out there promoting it. You need to be doing podcasts, you need to be doing interviews, you need to be doing Facebook Lives. But actually the book has the longevity that if your book is on someone's bookshelf, it's more likely to be memorable. So if someone says, I saw a guy, I can't remember his name, I think it was Steve something, that I can't remember, and then they might forget. If your book is firmly on someone's bookshelf, they're gonna recognize you. They'll go, oh yes, it's on my bookshelf, let's go and get it. There's something more permanent about it, especially for people like you and I, who we sell our services. We've got something that's intangible. We sell our knowledge, we sell our experience, our story, our journey, our wisdom. So having a book is just, it gives you that product that people can see. I remember many years ago, I had somebody contact me and said, Karen, can you run a workshop for me? This is what I want to do. Your book's on my bookshelf. I've never read it, but your book's on my bookshelf. And it put me in the forefront of her mind. So I was the person that she came to for that training because of that. And I think that was my first book. So it was quite a long time ago.
Yeah, no, totally. And also, I mean, you mentioned when you became an author first. How did it make you feel when you were an author, when you had a book? You talked about holding the book, but how about being an author? How did that make you feel?
Oh, it's exciting and also a bit scary, because when you are sharing your stuff, not you're raising your head above the parapet. Not everyone's going to like what you have to say, so you also fine, the more you put yourself out there, the more you get in front of people, not everyone's going to like it. Not everyone's going to, some people might have their buttons pushed. Some people just might not like your message if you're a bit disruptive as well. Not everyone's going to like that. So it can be a double-edged sword in that respect, but actually the more people you meet, the more people you can touch, the more people you can impact, the bigger difference that you can make, and that's incredibly important. And I think one of the funniest moments I had is I was speaking at an event in London. So this was probably around the time I was, when was this? About 2013, I think it was, because I helped her with her first book. I met a lady at an event, a coaching event I was speaking at, and I had a lady in the audience who started quoting my book back at me. So she'd read it, she'd devoured it, and it must have been my first book. And that was just, oh gosh, a really strange experience, a real experience. But she then, got my help with her first book. And she remains a friend to date as well. So
that's really cool.
Yeah.
I've had somebody tell me that they've read my book for the second time, and I'm like, really? You've read it? You've read it twice? So it is amazing. Okay, here's a question. Have you ever seen a stranger read your book? Maybe on the tube or on the train station. And if you have you gone up to them and said that you're the author?
No. I've heard people who have done that though. I've heard people that have seen people with with their book.
Oh my
goodness. No, I've never had that myself.
Not yet.
I have been approached in the loo though, but when I've been at events, I've been talking to someone, so like, oh, I'm on your mailing list, or people have come up to me when I've been at events, and whether I've been a speaker or even an attendee. I've had that before now.
Yeah, and you have to. Do you sign the books as well if people buy them at the event?
Absolutely, yeah.
You have to work out what to. Your autograph has to be different from your signature, because otherwise you're giving your signature away, and they could just Absolutely. Go to the bank and falsify loads of documents. My autograph is slightly different to my signature. It wasn't in the first couple of books, and then I suddenly realised what I was doing, so I changed that. So what
I always find that's a bit strange though, signing my books. It always makes me feel, I find it. I don't know about you, but I find that a bit strange.
I think this sounds big-headed. I've got used to it now because I've been doing my autograph, as I guess it is, for over 10 years now. And you think, look, if that's what people want, then that's fine. I think what I really struggle is a sincere message, because I've always put a message in the book, and I'd like it to be special for that person. But when there's a queue of 20 or 50 people, you can't give that much thought to the message. You just put something, and it might be the same as what you put in the last book, and you just say, well, that's such a shame. When people buy books from me at home, I've got time, and it's really nice, so I can find out a bit about the person, what they like. Is it sport? Is it academics? Have they been through an injury? Are they going through a low time? And then I find a part in my book that relates to what they're going through or what they enjoy, and then I put a post-it note in that says, I think this part of the book will be really nice for you to read first. Because I know what it's like when you get a book. You go, oh, I've got a book. I'll put that on my bookshelf and I'll read that later. So, and you never read it. Whereas if you've got a post-it note, it says, just read this bit. Just read this paragraph or this page. They'll read that page. And I also know that they'll probably go on to the next page and the next page, and that they'll get hooked.
That's lovely. I really like that. It adds a personal touch.
Yeah, it is. And it does take time and effort, but that's what the personal touch is about. And that's why, if you're proud of your book, which I am, then you want people to read it, and you want to encourage them. You've got to think of, how can I encourage them to read it without shoving it in their face? It's about laying it out for them to see, opening the pages for them almost. What would you say when you've helped people like business owners to write their book? What are the biggest mistakes that they might have made during that process?
I see quite a few mistakes. I think the key ones that are coming to mind at the moment is the really big one is I see a lot of people write the wrong book. So I remember speaking at an event probably about 6 years ago, and on the face of it, the person who was in the audience had she got a publishing deal, she'd got an advance, she was writing her book. However, she came up to me at the end and went, oh my God, Karen, I'm writing the wrong book. And that stuck with me ever since, because she was writing the book the publisher wanted. She wasn't writing the book that was going to support her business. So the lesson there is, it's so important to write a book that's totally aligned to your business. Because like you, Steve, you speak about your journey, you speak about your story. It makes sense for your book to be about your story. If someone's got a signature process and that's what they speak about, that's what they want more corporate gigs, it makes sense to write about that. And also bring in, their story and history as well. So, that's one of the mistakes. The other mistake I see made quite a lot, especially with kind of the businessy type books or kind of more of the how-to self-help books, is people write something that's not unique, or they think they know what people want to hear, but they don't find out. So one of the things I suggest people do is that they start promoting the book from the moment they start to write it. And I'm sure we can, you've got experience of doing that yourself, Steve. So when you start talking about your book from the moment you start to write it, you're validating your ideas, you're building your community, you're creating a list of people who really want to buy it, which I know you did amazingly well. So it's writing something unique is incredibly important, and not knowing how to structure it and just get bogged down. I know you went through that as well, getting bogged down with, you can't see the wood for the trees sometimes. So that's why working with someone like myself who can see things objectively, can give accountability feedback, kick up the backside every now and then, that's why people work with me, because I help them to go from idea to final manuscript, sorting through all of that stuff in the head that sometimes you just don't know where it should go, how it should flow. So they're kind of the biggest mistakes: writing the wrong book, not writing something that's unique, or finding out what people want to hear, and just not having a clear structure or way forward.
Yeah, and I totally agree with writing the wrong book, or make sure you don't write the wrong book.
Yeah.
It's very much about what I talk about with goal setting, is about finding your gold. What is that thing that you really want? I talk about the self-actualization. When it comes to your book, it's really hard to write a book. It's going to take a long time. And if you're doing something that you don't really want to do, but you think it might be good, at some point you'll come up with some excuse, you'll come up with some barrier, you'll come up with some reason why I can't do it anymore. Whereas if you're doing it because you're passionate about it, you want to share this, you want to share it to the world, potentially, because that's what a book does, you'll find a way of doing it. And I think that's so important to do. And some people, they don't get that right, really. And it's about understanding why you're writing the book in the first place. So when I was looking for book coaches, I remember I found one book coach, and I told her what I wanted, and she said it might be better, because you're running your own business, you should release this as a business book, and top tips about setting goals and working towards them, which is pretty much what my journey is. And I said, but I want to do an autobiography. And well, autobiographies are kind of for like top celebrities and stuff like that. I said, yeah, I get that, but I want to write an autobiography, and it's about what I wanted. Now I understand, now I've got the autobiography, it's like a foundation, and I've got many ideas for other books. I'm working on 3 at the moment, and I'm sure other ones will come from this book. But initially I needed to write the autobiography. If I'd done a business book, my passion wouldn't have been there, and I don't think it would have even got onto the shelves. It's about knowing what you want. And for you, Karen, I guess it's finding out what the business owners, what they need and what they want for their business, but also for themselves. What's that thing inside them that's telling them what they want? And fascinating that somebody said, I'm doing the wrong book. You just think, no, that's really bad. And you don't know whether you should advise them to drop it or just finish it off and then quickly go on to the next book. I don't know. What would you say if somebody's halfway through the book and then they realize they've made a mistake?
Well, you can go back and you can start again if you want to. Obviously, if you've got a publishing deal and you've been paid in advance, it's not necessarily the ideal thing to do, walk away from that type of thing. But it may be for that one, get it done and then move on to the next one. Yeah, I think, and when I wrote The Mouse That Rules, I started off, I was working with a friend of mine who's a developmental editor and a ghostwriter. She helped me with The Mouse That Rules because I went completely off at the wrong tangent. So we stripped it back and started again because it was my story. I was getting too close to it. I worked with her to help me with it. So I think, there's no one size fits all. I think if you're really going down the wrong track, start again. For most people, but it's not for everybody.
So how do you ensure that the people are writing a book for the right reason, for the business, or even for the credibility? So how do you ensure that happens?
First of all, there's kind of 3 things I look at, which is kind of basically there's 10 principles I teach, and the very first principle is starting with the end in mind. So it's helping people to get really clear on their vision. What is the goal for the book? What do they want it to do for them and their business? And what question I asked someone the other day made them think is, what will it give you that you don't have already? So that's a good question to answer. What will it give you that you don't have already? So when you know that your book wants, for yours, for example, you wanted more speaking engagements. For some people, they might want to use it as lumpy mail to get in front of corporate clients. They might want to launch a product off the back of the book. So that's a prime example. I was speaking to a couple of people about that yesterday. So when you know your vision, it makes it easier to know, will this book help me to achieve that vision? The second thing that I've already touched on before is alignment. You know, is it aligned to your business? Is your book going to be on brand? And I'm just working with a lady at the moment who's in the final proofs of her book. You know, when Sam, the designer, created the book, you know, it was all of her shades of turquoise, which is her brand color. So it was absolutely essential that they were on point. It was essential that the book and her business brand dovetail together completely, so people know, you know, they pick up their book and they know it's the same person. So alignment is key. So messaging, alignment, and then it's leverage. How are you going to leverage your book? How are you going to use your book as a business building tool to give you whatever you're looking for? So achieve the vision ultimately, because the book itself, you know, you put a book on Amazon, you know, you might sell it for 15 quid, you know, you might get a few pounds royalties, few dollars, few euros. It's not going to give you much income. So it's looking at how you can leverage it off the back of it. So you'll have people read your book and go, oh, that's really interesting. How can I work with this person further? And that's what a book, you know, a good book for most people enables them to do. It's not everybody's goal, but probably for about 80-90% of my clients, that's their goal, is to you know, use it as that leveraging tool.
Okay. Now, over the last half hour, you've mentioned self-funding quite a bit and self-validating a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, self-validating is building your community as you go. So you did blogging, so you did a lot of video blogs, so you took yourself to a field, you did loads of videos, so you got people interested in your book as you wrote it. Did you have a sign-up page as well? I think you did, Steve, didn't you?
I can't remember now. I kind of listened to all the advice that you gave me, but you gave me so much advice. Was it you did 30 days of marketing or something?
Oh yeah.
Just like, there was so much information, and I felt guilty that I wasn't doing all 30 of them. I only did about 15 of them, but
that's fine.
I did as much as I could, and that did involve me. I said I was going to do some videos of me reading my book or certain parts of my book, and then sending it out, and that's what I did, and it took me ages. But I live by this philosophy of no regrets. When my book was launched, I wanted to sell as many as possible, so I listened to the marketing that you suggested, and I did as much as I could. And one of them was doing blogs. I had a Facebook page, and I started building my tribe up, I guess, which is what you recommended.
Yeah, so self-validating and self-funding kind of go hand in hand, really. So self-validating is about not waiting till your book is launched before you start talking about it. You know, get people's involvement, and as you write it. And self-funding is really looking at how you can use that as potentially getting in front of the people who might want to employ you as you're writing your book. So what I mean by that is, don't wait until your book is published to actually then start, you know, using it as a business building tool. So for example, you know, you could do a survey. So a lot of people do surveys. I've got someone who's on my online program, the Smart Author System, who did a survey a couple of months ago, and she's now got 740 people, I think, give or take, who really want her books. They've done the survey for her, so she started to build that relationship with them. You know, she's very successful already, so she's already got a community, but this has enabled her to say, hey, I'm writing a book about this. So now she's got 740 people who will hopefully keep her motivated to get her to the end point, because they want her book and they want to buy it, and that's a great place to be. So doing a survey is great, because you can start to build your community, build your tribe as you're writing it. I was running a Make It Happen day yesterday, and I was talking to one of the ladies about sponsorship or crowdfunding. So there are other ways you can self-fund your book as well. And just by putting yourself out there, it's about showing up. The 10th principle I teach is about showing up in a bigger way. Unless you show up when you start writing a book, people aren't going to be ready for it and want to devour it when you launch it. So it's keeping that momentum going as you write it, which is hard. It's a hard balance when you're running a business, trying to lead a life at the same time. But there are shortcuts, and that's really what I help people to do, is to manage the shortcuts to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, no, totally. I think I struggled when I was writing my book, and I dedicated some time to that. And then I stopped writing my book, and I came over to almost another computer, and then I had to blog about me writing my book. I'm thinking, all I'm doing is writing. I need to run a business at some point. If you don't do the blogging, if you don't build your tribe up, if you don't get some followers, then nobody will buy your book when you finally launch it. You'll launch it with all banners and bells and whistles, and not everybody will know that it's coming out. It's about building it up. And I think this is where some people struggle, is they kind of put themselves down in a way. They think, well, who on earth would want to buy the book? You think, no, you've got the wrong thing. You should have thought about this right at the beginning. This is why you're writing it. Everybody wants to read your book. So make sure that they know about it. And it's about shouting loud about it and how you can get people to come along. Do you believe that you can actually sell your book before you've actually finished writing it?
Yeah, great example is Sally Kay, who's written a book about reflexology lymph drainage, which is what she does. She sold 1,000 copies before she launched it last year because she had already built the community, and she was working with building the community as we were working together. And so she's probably one of my most successful authors in terms of book sales, individual book sales, because obviously, you know, people need to hear about it, and then it's, you know, it's selling consistently through the online platforms as well, you know, Amazon, Waterstones, Barnes and Noble, Smiths, etc. So she was very successful in that view. But I think what's important to mention here, Steve, is that it's not just about individual book sales. You know, the most, so let's go back to the self-funding. Self-funding, there's kind of 7 things you can do as you write it, which means that you can sell your book before you launch it, you can build your profile as you launch it, but there are dozens of things you can do afterwards. So bulk copies, I know that's something that you often do with your speaking engagements. I remember a couple of months ago, I think it was, or a month or so ago, you ordered 240 copies of your book, and then you sat down because you were booked for a speaking gig. They also wanted to buy copies for their audience. That is great, because it's easier then than individually selling 240 copies on Amazon, isn't it?
Yes.
So that is kind of the ultimate goal, is to, you know, could you get your book onto academic reading lists? So that's one thing I was talking to a client about earlier this week. Could you get your book, you know, could you be featured on an expo or something like that? So there's so many things you can do. The book is just part of it. So that's just something that's key. It's not, you know, if you are just focused on selling your book, it's going to take a long time to make any money off the back of it. But if you're focused on how you can leverage it, that's the difference that makes the difference.
Yeah, I think you're right with the bulk sales. That really helps. And all it is you're suggesting, you're not selling, you're serving. You're trying to help the person have a really good event and a good experience. And you say, do you think that the audience would all like a copy of my book? You know, if you wanted to purchase one for them, and you can start negotiating with pricing and stuff like that, because you know, if you do the calculations, if they all went and bought it off Amazon, you wouldn't get that much money. But if you reduce your fees and they bought it off you through the organizer of the event, you'd make a lot more, and you wouldn't be stressed. So I love selling my book after the event. I've spoken on the stage. People go, wow, it's amazing. Can I buy your book? Absolutely. I'm stood at the table. I'm doing all the books. I'm busy. And much as I love selling my book, I'm now doing the talking, and I love the mingling, the talking. I can't do that because I'm doing the card machine. I'm doing the writing. They get the book. They want to chat. I can't chat. I've got to sell the books. And off they go without talking to me. And that's the thing that I really regret, is not being able to talk to people. If they've already got a book because they bought it in advance by the organizer, job's done. You know, they can get a nice personal message. We can have an old chit chat, and it's great. So it's about talking to the event organizer. Would your audience like? I know not everybody has this kind of situation, but sometimes it depends where you're going and what offers you can make. And I think that's a really good idea to bulk buy, definitely.
But it's adding value as well. It's adding value to the experience, adding value to the end user. So they hear a little bit, you know, in half an hour, they can't hear all of your experience, all of your, everything that you've been through, your whole journey, but actually they can, you know, they'll get to know you, and through reading your book, they'll get to know you on a much deeper level. So that's great when you can add value like that. Which is what we're doing here, is serving. We're looking at how can we take the experiences we've gone through, the knowledge we've got, the wisdom we have, to actually make a bigger difference to people. That's what we're all trying to do at some level, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. We're coming to the end of the questions I've got. I've got another, a strange one first. So for my book, I wanted to put, you kept on saying, Steve, it's your book. You can do whatever you want. It's your book. I was like, really? Okay, that's good. So I had in mind, I had a music playlist, I had poetry, and I had photos, of course, and diary entries. Apart from those, what's been the strangest thing that somebody's wanted to put in their book, include in their book, that you thought, well, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but it's their book, and you said, yeah, go for it. Is there anything that...
I haven't got anything strange. I don't think I've got anything strange. Just trying to think. No, I can't think of anything strange. Wow. I think one of the things I come across with clients is about copyright models, and, you know, especially if you want to use other people's copyrighted material, about getting permissions and things like that, and that can be a bit of a minefield. So that's kind of the trickiest thing that I have, and especially with poems, that if you're using someone else's poems, or music lyrics is pretty much a no-no, as you found out. So there are you know, it becomes a little bit tricky at that stage. I suppose the hardest one I've had in terms of copyright was a book called A Funeral Service, which we published or supported the writing publishing last year, I think it was, because there was a lot of copyrighted material. So it was painstaking for the admin person who was going through all of the kind of the permission side of things, and it was just a bit tricky, because you know, some people are free to sort of like, of course they want you to promote their stuff, and they're quite happy and willing for you to share it, but some people get really picky and want, you know, thousands of pounds for you to, you know, to replicate something that's theirs. And I get that everyone's got their own copyright and it's their material, but actually I think it's about being willing to share it as well.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. I found it so frustrating that I wasn't allowed to include song lyrics, because I've got a lot of songs in my book throughout it, and I wanted to share with my audience why that song and why those lines in that song really helped me through my journey, whether it's through rehabilitation or being an elite athlete. Why did that song pick me up from where I was or keep me pushing on? And I couldn't. And I had to almost rewrite the lyrics to say this song made me feel like, and then put my own words. And it's just because they think, well, they're just lyrics. Surely anybody could use those words and not call them lyrics. But there was too much of a risk. And I think that's the thing, that once you put the book out, it's out. You can't delete it. You can't like get them back and change it or anything. It's out there. And that's evidence. So if you've done something wrong and not got copyright or authorization, then you're in trouble. And I think in a way that's kind of scary. And again, that's why it's good to have you and your team to say, Steve, you really can't. And I remember you sent me a post that had been written in America or something, and somebody was asking the same questions. What if? And they said, no. But what if this? No.
No.
No. It's just like, there's just no. You can't include lyrics. Just like, oh.
I think writing a book is such a minefield. That's why there are people like me who do the book mentoring and book coaching, is because it is a minefield. And as I said earlier, you know, there's loads of mistakes that people make, and it does frustrate me. So, you know, one of the things that frustrates me is when people go, they write their book, they publish it, they upload it to Amazon, but they don't do anything else. And then so they limit their reach because nobody else can order it. So, you know, if someone goes into Waterstones and said, I want to order, you know, I want Steve Judge's book, they can order your book. Yep. But if you've just gone direct with Amazon, you can't do that. So I think it's such a minefield, the whole industry these days, when it's gone from sort of very much 10 years ago, just the traditional model, and now it's complicated for people. If you don't know what you don't know at the end of the day. And I think a little knowledge can be quite dangerous as well, because you think, oh, I can do it myself, but actually there's just nuances that, you know, that not everybody knows about, because that's not their thing.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. And I got a lot of people saying, dead easy, write it, edit it, get some software to edit it, upload it, bish bash bosh, you got a book. Dead easy, Steve. And I was like, what? Do what? I kind of tried to do the bish bash bosh, that it didn't work, and I think that's why I got your help. But I think a lot of people carry on doing that. They do all the hard work, they upload it, and they go, da-da, does anybody want to buy it? They don't even ask. They just say, oh, everybody will buy it now, but they don't do any marketing, they don't do any follow-up, they haven't built their tribe, and the book has literally sat there lost on Amazon. And then like a couple of months later, they're going, well, I've only sold like 27 copies. And that was to my family and friends. And you go, yeah, well, you need to keep going all the time. And people are very ignorant on that in the nicest way possible. You've got to keep going. And again, if you're passionate, if you're proud of it, you'll keep pushing it. I keep pushing it now. You know, it's a year later, and people are still wanting to buy it, and people are giving me feedback, and that encourages me to keep going, keep selling it. Again, it's not really selling, it's serving. People really want to read my story, want to read the book, and that's exciting, and that's exactly how it should be, because a book is a precious thing. So people are out there, sometimes they're procrastinating, sometimes they're stuck. Tell us, as a wrap up, I guess, what is the best way? How can you help them on their book journey, Karen?
Well, you know, if there's anyone watching this interview and thinking, yeah, I really want to write a book, I resonate with what you're saying, you know, I want to know how to do it, I want to, you know, avoid the mistakes, get some of the shortcuts, I invite people to watch a masterclass I recorded recently, which takes people through basically the process of writing a book. It talks about some of the mistakes people make. It talks about self-funding and self-validation in a bit more detail, and it gives you some of the shortcuts that I share with people. So that's one thing that I recommend you do, and I know we've got a link that we're going to share in a moment. You are welcome to sign up for the Get Started workbook, which is on my website as well. So literally, if you go to libertas.com, you'll find that Get Started workbook. But I start with the masterclass, start to find out a bit more about me and how I can help you. Ultimately, I can help people to go from idea to final manuscript and all of the little steps in between.
Okay.
My lockdown project was creating my one-to-one program. I turned it into a 6-week program called the Smart Author System, and that's something that, you know, we've had our first person be published through that process as well. So it's great seeing some of the successes that people are having.
Oh wow. Okay, that's really good. Now you talk about the link. This is the link. I've got it old school. Hopefully that's not back to front. I hope sometimes you
No,
never.
that's right. Perfect.
So I'll keep it here just in case people want to write that down. But also we'll put a link attached to the video so people can get that. But if not, then they can contact yourself, contact me,
Yeah.
and we'll share the link so they can get started. And I think the thing is that people who watch this video, hopefully we've answered a lot of their questions that they've had about their book. They've obviously got a book. There's something they're really passionate. They've got that vision. The next step is to, well, if you need help, ask for help. And I know that's a hard thing to do sometimes. By all means, go it alone if you want. And that's what I did. But when the time comes that you need the help, type this in, get the link, and that will take you through to Karen. And Karen will be able to help you, hold your hand through the process, because at the end of it, you do end up with a book, and you become an author, and it's really cool being an author. I love saying that I'm an author. I love it. One of the best things is when I take people buy my book, and I go down to the post office and to post them off to people, and they say, "What's in the parcel?" And I go, "My autobiography." My book. I love that. So that's really good.
It was a pleasure to support you through the process, Steve, and help you to actually visualize that thing that was on those post-it notes on those walls.
Oh,
you know, a few years ago now. Gosh, yeah.
Yeah, probably 2017. Probably.
It was December 2017. Yeah.
Seems such a long time ago, and I'd been thinking about writing a book for years before that, and I'd started it and stopped it, and at that point I just went, right, now is the time. I'm not going to lean on my excuses anymore. I'm gonna go for it. And yeah, job done. And like I said, once you've done one, I don't think, for me, I didn't say, oh, that was easy, I'll do it again. I say, wow, that was rewarding. If I want to do another book, I now know that it's possible. And I think it opens that door. Like I said, I've been given some other opportunities to write with other, co-authors. I've got a book coming out in November, which is with global authors, and another business book that I've done a chapter for. And I've got another project with a coach that wants me to do 100 days of inspiration. Plus I've got a project that I want to do. Oh, and I've got another project, speaking project. It opens the door. It suddenly makes things more realistic and brings reality to you. And so thank you very much, Karen, for your help on that, and future help, because now that we've connected, it's always nice to pick your brains with you and your team and help me on my journey, and hopefully we can help some other people on their book writing journey as well.
Absolutely. I think, I think especially post-COVID, or, sort of coming out of the kind of the pandemic, is I'm finding more and more people have got to the stage now. It's just like, I've been thinking about it for way too long. Bloody time to do it. So just do it. And but do it in the best possible way. So I'm here to help anyone who's looking for support to get their book out there.
Okay, just do it. Karen says, just do it. I would say, don't lean on your excuses. I think this interview here has got rid of all those excuses. You'll know what you need to do now. So Karen, once again, thank you very much for being present today, putting up with all the questions that I've got, and look forward to sharing this out to the wider community to help them on their book journey.
Thank you, Steve.